Marcus, a 15-year-old, was walking to his grandmother's house in Maplewood. It was his favorite place, always filled with the smell of freshly baked cookies and the warmth of her hugs. She always made him feel special, sharing stories, encouraging his dreams, and even letting him have a few cookies before dinner if he'd had a rough day. As he strolled through the familiar streets, he felt the sense of calm he always felt heading to her house. But today, as he walked, Marcus noticed two police officers moving slowly behind him. At first, he didn't think much of it. Maplewood was a quiet, safe neighborhood, and the police were supposed to protect people. But the officers kept creeping closer, almost as if they were deliberately shadowing him. He glanced back once, then again, and saw that they were staring directly at him. The two officers had stern, unwelcoming expressions, the kind that made Marcus feel uneasy. Their eyes were cold and calculating, giving no hint of friendliness. A shiver ran down his spine as he quickened his pace, hoping they would stop following. But the officers only moved closer, as if matching his stride. Trying to calm his nerves, Marcus reached into his pocket and took out his phone, dialing his dad's number. His father, Chief Samuel Thompson, had recently taken over as the chief of police in Crestwood, and since starting, he had often reminded Marcus to call him any time he felt unsafe. "If you ever feel uncomfortable or in danger, you can always call me," he'd said, his voice full of reassurance. Today, those words felt more real than ever. As the officers closed the distance, Marcus heard one of them call out, "Hey, kid!" The voice was gruff, not at all friendly. "Where do you think you're going?" Marcus turned around, trying to hide the nervous tremor in his voice. "To my grandmother's house, sir. She lives just down the road," he answered, pointing down the street, hoping they would recognize the neighborhood and let him be. But the officers didn't seem interested in his explanation. Instead, they began asking him a series of questions, most of which felt unnecessary. They wanted to know why he was walking in that particular neighborhood, if he was carrying anything suspicious, and if he had any identification on him. Confused and frightened, Marcus tried to answer, but their questions came faster than he could respond. He hoped his dad would arrive soon. Suddenly, without warning, one of the officers reached into Marcus's pockets, searching through them as though he expected to find something incriminating. But there was nothing there, only a small gift box with a scarf he'd bought for his grandmother. The way the officer searched him made Marcus feel humiliated and scared. He looked down at his feet, his heart pounding, wondering how he'd ended up in this situation just for walking down the street. Back at the Crestwood station, Chief Thompson's phone buzzed. When he saw Marcus's name on the caller ID, a sense of urgency washed over him. Marcus rarely called him during the day, especially while visiting his grandmother. He picked up, and the quiet, worried tone in his son's voice immediately put him on edge. Marcus described the situation as calmly as he could, but Chief Thompson could hear the fear beneath his words. Without a moment's hesitation, he grabbed his keys and headed out the door, driving as fast as he could toward Maplewood, his mind racing with worry. Meanwhile, on the street corner, the two officers, Officer Reeves and Officer Duncan, continued to press Marcus with questions. Officer Reeves looked down at him, his face stern and unyielding. "Young man, you know people like you shouldn't be wandering around here," he said, his tone cold, the words heavy with accusation. "Are you carrying anything illegal?" "No, sir," Marcus replied, his voice steady though his hands were trembling. Officer Duncan, the younger of the two, stood to the side, watching but saying nothing. He seemed uncomfortable, glancing between Marcus and his partner, but he made no move to intervene. Just as Officer Reeves was about to ask another question, Marcus noticed a familiar car pulling up at the corner, his dad's car. Relief flooded him as he watched Chief Thompson step out and approach with a determined stride. The officers turned and their expressions shifted, as they recognized their superior. Chief Thompson's face was impassive, but Marcus could see the fire in his eyes. He looked down at Marcus, then back at the officers, his voice controlled but filled with unmistakable authority. "Would one of you care to explain what's going on here?" The officers exchanged glances, clearly caught off guard. Officer Reeves hesitated, then muttered, "Chief, we thought he looked suspicious. Didn't seem like he belonged in this neighborhood." Chief Thompson's expression darkened, and his voice, though calm, held an edge of anger. "Suspicious? You mean my son was suspicious in his own neighborhood? This is where his grandmother lives, and you're telling me you saw him as a threat?" Reeves stammered, "Sir, we didn't know he was your son." Chief Thompson took a step closer, his eyes locked on Reeves. "You didn't know because you didn't ask. Instead, you assumed." He spoke each word deliberately, and the weight of his tone left no room for argument. "Tell me, does a young boy walking to his grandmother's house really look like a threat to you both?" The officers stood silent, clearly uncomfortable under his piercing gaze. Officer Duncan, looking at the ground, finally muttered, "I'm sorry, sir. We made a mistake." "A mistake?" Chief Thompson repeated, his voice heavy with disappointment. "This isn't just a mistake. It's a failure to treat people with the respect and dignity they deserve." He glanced at Marcus, then back at the officers. "As police officers, our duty is to protect this community. You both crossed the line today, and there will be consequences." The officers nodded, remorse evident in their expressions. Chief Thompson put a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Come on, son," he said, guiding him back to the car. As they walked away, Marcus felt a mixture of relief and pride in his father. Justice had been served, and the officers had learned a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. Yet, as they drove home, he couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that this kind of experience wasn't unique. If it had happened to him, how many others had been treated the same way? Later that evening, the family gathered around the dinner table. Marcus's mother, Ellen, had listened intently to her husband's recounting of the afternoon's events, her face clouded with worry. As they finished eating, she placed a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Marcus, honey, I'm so sorry you had to go through that," she said softly. "You did nothing wrong." Marcus nodded, but he still felt a sense of confusion and anger. "Mom, Dad, why do people see me as a threat? I was just going to Grandma's, but those officers acted like I was doing something wrong just for being there." Chief Thompson took a deep breath. "Marcus, sometimes people make judgments based on their own fears and biases rather than seeing who someone truly is. It's wrong, and it's something I'm working to change in the department." He paused, looking at his son with a mix of pride and sadness. "I want you to know, though, that you don't have to accept being treated that way. Your voice matters, and speaking out about these experiences can help make things better for others." Marcus looked down at his hands, feeling a mix of emotions. "Dad, do you think I should tell people what happened?" Chief Thompson nodded thoughtfully. "I do, son, if you feel comfortable with it. Sharing your story can help others see the reality of these experiences, and it's one way to bring about change." The idea sat heavily on Marcus's mind that night. He felt a responsibility, but he also knew speaking out would mean reliving those moments of fear and humiliation. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he made up his mind. The next day, with his father's encouragement, Marcus shared his story at school, speaking honestly about what had happened and how it made him feel. His friends listened, some surprised, others nodding with understanding. News of the incident spread through the community, sparking conversations about fairness, accountability, and respect. Over the following weeks, Chief Thompson implemented new training protocols within the department, focusing on empathy, community relationships, and the importance of unbiased policing. Marcus's story became a powerful example of why change was needed. Months later, Marcus still visited his grandmother in Maplewood, but now he walked with his head held high, knowing that his experience had helped make Crestwood a better place for everyone. It was only a beginning, but it was a step toward a future where everyone could feel safe, valued, and respected in their own neighborhood.